Ladies and gentlemen, in the last lecture, I defined the fundamental nature of a proper political system, a system built on the inviolate supremacy of individual rights. Tonight I shall discuss the mechanics of the economic system that is the logical corollary of a political system of limited constitutional government. I shall discuss the economic system which has been mankind's greatest benefactor and which has been most reviled and denounced, capitalism. Economics is the science that studies the principles governing the exchange of material values and the production of material values in relation to exchange. Capitalism is the economic system based on the private ownership of the means of production. It is a system in which men freely produce and exchange goods and services, unregulated and uncontrolled by any governmental, any coercive intervention. A fully consistent capitalism, a fully free society, has never existed. But in the 19th century America, men came closer to it than at any other time or place in history. Today, few people really understand what capitalism is. Most of them, however, regard it as evil, old-fashioned, passé, which means that they regard freedom as evil, old-fashioned, passé. If one contrasts the standard of living and mode of existence of the average American with that of the medieval serf, the difference is truly staggering. The medieval serf ate his meals off an earthen floor in a hut held together with mud. He worked 18 hours a day and lived in chronic terror of plagues and famines that periodically wiped out hundreds of thousands of lives. The richest and most powerful feudal lords lived in conditions that a modern American worker would regard as squalor. They had no bathrooms, they had no underwear, they shivered in winter wind-swept castles and died of epidemics now long forgotten except in the history books of medicine. The simplest living amenities that we take for granted, soap, canned vegetables, radios, central heating, would have been regarded by them as unimaginable luxuries. What made this startling transformation in man's mode of existence possible? What was responsible for this incredible increase in wealth and standard of living of the lowest individual? What makes wealth possible? Which means, what makes life possible? Wealth, that is, physical goods, physical values, is a necessity of man's survival. Wealth is not simply paper money. It is not paper that feeds and clothes and shelters you. Wealth is material goods. Without material goods, without material values, man cannot exist. But wealth has to be produced. Wealth is created by transforming the materials of nature to serve human purposes, by transforming ore under the ground into the steel girders of apartment buildings, by transforming seed into a harvest, by transforming a waterfall into a source of electric power. All wealth is the product of man's mind and labor, of thought directing action. Wealth is not the product of instinct or muscles. It is the product of human intelligence. If man lived on a desert island, he would have to produce single-handedly all the goods he needed. He would have to work incredibly hard to scrape out the barest level of subsistence. He would have to do his own hunting and fishing, build his own shelter, and fashion his own clothes. But living and dealing with other men under a system of the division of labor and the exchange of goods and services, man's efforts are much more productive and yield him a much higher standard of living. Through specialization and exchange, men are able to raise their mutual productivity. That is, they are able to achieve many more values for the same amount of effort or for less effort. There are a number of reasons for this. First, by concentrated specialization upon the specific activity, men are able to achieve a much greater skill at their particular task than if they had to diversify their activities across 100 different endeavors. For instance, if a man spends all his time making shoes, he will learn how to make them better and faster than if he had to divide his time among making shoes, growing food, building a shelter, and so forth. If he then trades with men who have specialized and therefore have gained higher proficiency in other tasks, his efforts and theirs bring them all a higher reward. Secondly, all men are not equally competent and able to perform all types of work. The division of labor makes it possible for men to do that which they can do best. Even if Hank Rearden, for example, could sweep floors more efficiently than the janitor in his factory, it would still be more advantageous to them both for Rearden to delegate the task of floor sweeping to his janitor in order to have his full time for his industrial activities, which he can perform, but which are beyond the competence of his janitor. Third, different geographical areas do not contain identical productive possibilities. Some areas are suitable for mining, others are more suitable for agricultural development, and so forth. It is clearly most productive for those different areas to be used in the manner for which they are best suited, and for the men in those different areas to exchange the results of their work with one another. Fourth, there are a great many activities and tasks that are beyond the power of a single isolated individual. One man alone cannot drill through a mountain, nor run a railroad, nor build a skyscraper. This is equally true for the creative mastery of the many sciences necessary for the maintenance of an industrial, technological civilization. Specialization and cooperation are indispensable for such achievements. But there is one fact that must not be forgotten. No matter how complex social and economic organization becomes, and no matter how specialized human activities, the basic nature, meaning, and purpose of productive work must always be remembered. That is, that a man works for himself. He works to maintain his own survival. This would be perfectly clear to everyone if each person worked alone on a desert island or a self-sustaining farm. It would not be assumed that the purpose of a man working on a desert island is to provide for the survival of some man living on another desert island. But this is what is forgotten or blanked out by too many people when they look at the complex economic interrelationships that exist among men in a trade society. It is assumed, in effect, that the purpose and duty of the man who specializes in manufacturing shoes is to provide the community with shoes, that this, and not his own survival and needs, is his goal, that service to the needs of the community is his primary moral obligation. Unfortunately, too many businessmen infected by the altruist morality have accepted this creed and have rushed to announce that they are only public servants, that the goal and justification of their work is not the profits they make, but the employment they offer and the goods they distribute. Remember, therefore, that the motive of social organization and the division of labor is the self-interest of the individual persons who participate. In a free trade society, interests of men do not clash. All can profit from the exchange of goods and services. But social good, as apart from or against individual good, is not the purpose or justification of trade or of society.